Arkansas Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders drags an Air Force commander into her political circus, publicizing his resignation to push her religious right-wing agenda. After Colonel Patterson of the 188th Airwing, Arkansas Air National Guard, resigned, citing personal reasons, the governor informed President Biden and Secretary of Defense Austin that the military's paid leave program for abortion care compromises, the commander's religious beliefs, and it is their fault our country is now weaker. With no official word from the colonel, we are left with this political hack meddling in military affairs without any real regard for the commander's situation. But isn't it better for a commander to step down when they realize that their religious beliefs conflict with their duties? As the military grapples with complex reproductive issues, Patterson's departure could highlight the clash between personal ideologies with principles of service, while Sanders' actions highlight her lack of professionalism and military prowess. This story is from taskandpurpose.com by Jeff Schogel on January 3rd, 2024. And Infidel, you and I have been talking about this all week. You know, this is not the first time that we've mentioned it. Actually, I brought this up to you to see if we could talk about it on the show, because as a service member, you know, I kind of take this a little bit personally. And before I get into kind of my thoughts and opinions, I wanted to see what yours were on this topic.
I do say that I think that Huckabee first did a disservice to the military by saying that, by trying to imply this or play this as a role of lessened capability because of this resignation. In no way do I see anything that would say that he is incompetent or anything less than a perfectly good leader in his position. I do take issue with the way he decided at this point that he just couldn't do this any further. I do feel that there was likely some type of motivation that made him make the decision between his moral choice and his responsibility as a leader that he was supposed to be. My problem is that I don't see where he made the big sacrifice. You know, when I look back at examples, biblical examples of the boldness of Simon Peter or Saul or Paul, you see someone who put something in the game. There was skin in the game. It wasn't just something where, okay, well, I'm going to lose some privileges of leadership, because he's definitely going to lose privileges, you know, of leadership. But ultimately, at the end of the day, he's not going to lose his job. And I'm not saying he should, nor his rank, but it's really not that great of a commitment for him to make this decision. Now, it does annoy me that Huckabee, never to lose an opportunity to score political points, is going to hop right on this. I do think that this gentleman probably made this choice over abortion. I don't think that's being misrepresented. And I do find a real problem with that. But for Huckabee to then hop on this and some of the things that she said are just absolutely ridiculous, talking about how this is a political decision, having this rule into play where the federal government allows the military to go to a state that's less restrictive. It's so dishonest, because I don't think people are going out there having abortions and for political reasons. That right there is just completely false. People are having abortions for reasons of their own decision to make, but ultimately not a political choice. Was hers a political choice? Yes, like just about everything she does. So when it comes down to it, I don't see him as an act of bravery. I think it's best lethargy and inaction. You know, giving up the awesome parking spot and all those advantages isn't really making a commitment for our life or whatever this is supposed to be representative of. Now, when it comes down to it, I'm glad at least this story is getting some recognition, because I agree with you on the point, Jimmy, that if there's a problem, if you have an issue and you believe God's first, that is your right. But make that decision the day they come into conflict, not the day it becomes inconvenient. And that's what I feel like we have here. We have a grifter taking advantage of a person who became a willful pawn because it was no longer convenient to ride with the status quo. So here I am. Look at me. Woohoo. I'm not that impressed. Now, Helen, what about you? Where you come from on this issue? What are your ideas?
Well, the first thing I thought when I read this article, somebody wants to run for office. That was the first thing that popped into my brain. And I could be wrong, but the timing of his resignation, reads a little, suspicious to me. And do I have any proof of these claims that run through my brain now? But I'm just a little, hesitant to think that this alone is being done for his morals alone. It might, but the timing's very odd. And like I said, I don't know his mind, but I'm wondering on some level, this might be a political stunt. He might be standing up for his morals, but it can also be calculated at the same time. And again, I don't know, but that was my feeling when I first initially read this article. And honestly, I don't really care if his ideology and his religion are that he has a anti-choice stance. That's fine. But I just find this whole thing a little weird, and I do have more to say on this, but I'm going to pass it over to Graham for now, because I want to get his reflections for me before I go into the rest of mine. And I also want to hear what everybody else has to say.
Sure, no problem. I have, I think, a similar reaction. Initially, when I read it, I was focused on the servicemen. And then I read Jimmy's pre-show notes where he was sort of saying, hey, is this Huckabee Sanders being opportunistic? And that made me sort of rethink a little bit. But when I was thinking about what I wanted to focus on, I did want to focus on Huckabee and her sentence that she said, quote, Colonel Patterson was forced to personally choose between either continuing his command or adhering to this his sincerely held religious beliefs against abortion. He was forced to choose. This is what Dan Dennett used to call a deepity. It's kind of a weird form of it, but it's still a deepity. A deepity is something that it's a statement that to the extent it is true, it is trivial, and to the extent that it is significant or profound, it is false. So here we have a claim that Patterson was, quote, forced to choose between continuing his command or adhering to his beliefs. But to what extent was he forced? He joined the military voluntarily, I assume. The Bible endorses conscription and slave soldiers, but we don't do that. So it's a voluntary service. And he knew when he joined, he would be prosecuted by force, if necessary, if he failed to obey the lawful orders of his chain of command. So did he understand that? Of course he did. So was he forced to make the decision? Well, in a trivial matter, yes, he was forced to make a decision. He had to either follow orders or he had the luxury, because he was in the National Guard, to quit. And so he was forced to make a decision. Is that a profound thing? No. Everyone in the military is constantly forced to make such decisions if they even have the luxury to quit, Plus, everybody in a regular job does. If you work for a big chemical company, you learn that they've been dumping chemicals in people's backyards. You are forced to make a decision. So there's nothing astounding here. It goes, I think, to what Jimmy was saying is he may legitimately have just said, I'm going to make this choice to quit. I don't like what my employer's doing. I am going to leave this job. Now, I do agree with Helen and Infidel to say the timing was interesting. He took his command 5 months after this rule went into effect. So he knew what he was getting into. And so he put his troops through a change of command only to 5 months later have them go through another one. So that's a little bit suspicious to me. But I think the main focus of Jimmy's notes regarding Huckabee are really what I want to go. The decision that he was making was between honoring an oath he swore to support the Constitution and walking away. It wasn't a decision between honoring his oath and his religion, right? It's just not a big deal. Quite frankly, that's kind of what I walked away with. In the past, we have seen big deals. If you remember Kim Davis, the Kentucky clerk who refused the gay couple a marriage license, she was in the news this week. 10 years later, I think, a court finally ordered her to pay an extra $260,000 to the couple's attorneys after she'd already spent 5 days in jail and paid the couple $100,000 for using her position of power to enforce her personal beliefs on them. That's an example further of somebody being quote unquote forced to decide. Yet we all look at that and go, yeah, she did the wrong thing. The couple could have come in, said, we want a license. And she could have said, I quit, like this serviceman. But instead, she used her authority to fight it. So props to him, quite frankly, for walking away and not dishonoring his oath and not soiling the Constitution. And shame on Huckabee for taking advantage of that honorable decision that he made. Is that where you're getting, Jimmy?
I think so. Really, what I want to say, though, is that we wouldn't be talking about this at all had Sarah Huckabee Sanders not jumped on the opportunity to take this man's personal life and drag it out into the political arena. Now, before I go any further, I just want to acknowledge that because I am a military officer, that I am not here to provide official comment, and I'm not here as a representative of the government, the Air Force, or the Department of Defense. My thoughts and opinions are my own, and those are that we don't even know if this is even true. I mean, did he resign for this reason, or is that just something that Sarah Huckabee Sanders is saying? Because there is no official statement from him, and he doesn't even owe us one, right? He submitted his resignation and cited personal reasons, okay? Sarah Huckabee Sanders stepped in and then dragged him before the president and the Department of Defense to use him as a political pawn. But this is inconsistent with what we've seen. And like you said, not to downplay his contribution to our country and his service, but it is just one colonel. And the military is not set up in the way that if one colonel steps down from command, that the whole thing is going to fall. No, there is somebody else ready to step in and to do their very best and to follow their orders. And I actually would prefer that if this is even true and that this commander said, well, these abortion rules, these paid leave rules for abortion that the military has are really conflicting me and I need to step out of command. I commend him for that. Here's the thing, though. He didn't even really quit. I mean, he's still serving. He just couldn't command because of personal reasons. And that's all we know. But Sarah Huckabee Sanders stepped in to say, hey, everybody, look, religion, look, Democrats, and tried to turn this into something it's not, because we do know, unlike the commander, unlike the assessment that we could make saying, well, the timing's interesting, he might be gearing up for a political run. We have no proof of that. What we do have proof of is Sarah Huckabee Sanders with her own political goals. And I didn't see her, getting back to this thing being inconsistent, when Secretary of Defense James Mattis stepped down because of how we were treating our allies. I don't remember her even lifting a finger about this. I don't remember her raising a stink at all. This was the Secretary of Defense, as opposed to one colonel in the Air National Guard. But this is what we really need to follow. So, I have a little bit more I can say about this. I just, as somebody in the military, while Sarah Huckabee Sanders stepped in to take advantage of this situation, I want to take advantage of the opportunity to point out her disingenuousness. I can speak. But anyway, those are my initial thoughts. And I'll kick it over to Infidel to see if he's got anything to follow up.
I would put nothing past Huckabee. If anything has shown her to be king at bad decision making, just look at the podium she is stood behind at one point that was she paid $20,000. Well, the state of Arkansas paid $20,000 for her. So and of course she lies about so consistently that there's no way I could ever get a read on anything, even if she said it in person. But yes, we only have her words, and we have no idea really, other than personal reasons. I am suspicious, but suspicion doesn't say definitively anything. I can be suspicious all day. But the truth is that I do know one thing, and that is that while Huckabee talks about how important life is and how important how pro-life she is, and this is somewhat adjacent, but there's a guy who's been sitting in prison in Arkansas since 1991, Charlie Vaughn. He's illiterate. He missed a date to file some paperwork because somebody else was convicted of the crime that he was convicted of. And it finally ended up on her desk this past Thanksgiving. And her answer was essentially, yeah, okay, you did miss the paperwork. Too bad. You can try again in 6 years. So that doesn't sound pro-life to me. So with that in mind, pro-life is a game. It's a pawn, especially for a state that ranks 11th in prisons and has some of the lowest standards of livings of many third world countries. I mean, they're down there at the bottom of the United States, 48th and 49th in almost everything. We used to joke in Louisiana that Arkansas and Mississippi existed so we wouldn't be 50th. And she's consistently holding that. It's like they're doing everything they can to deny the ability of people to change things. And let's make sure we're pro-life and that somebody doesn't have the right to decide what happens with their body. For me, it's just disgusting. And Helen.
Since we're talking about Sanders, let me quote her. So she has said, Colonel Patterson was forced to personally choose between either continuing his command or adhering to his sincerity held religious beliefs against abortion. Sanders wrote a letter first reported by conservative outlet The Daily Caller. Because he adhered first to his faith instead of overtly political mandates, he voluntarily resigned his command. I admire Colonel Patterson for having the confidence of his convictions, but regret that our nation's military will suffer the losses of dedicated airman, leader, and guardsman as a commander. Well, when I want to ask Sarah, what is it? Was he forced or did he voluntarily resign over a policy that had nothing to do with him? So, and I just find it kind of disgusting that she's using this for her own political clout. She's dog whistling to all the Republicans, and that, these are, they're doing abortions in the military, and if we're going to be pro-life, which I find ironic in the military a little bit, that, we're going to maybe this is something we should look at, if people are going to serve. This is what I see this as, and I feel this is more of a political stunt than really, especially on Sanders' side. I can't know the commander's, true thoughts. And I said that at the beginning, but I'm a little sus. That's all, but I'm really disgusted by the fact of the way Sanders is using this just for, her own political gain or whatever candidate she wants to support, and to also, try to get people to think about what's going on in the military and, do we really want this, blah, 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 blah. Sorry.
I agree. I think that the distinction between whether or not he did it for legit reasons or because he wants to go get a book deal later on that, I don't think that's as important. I'm won over by Jimmy's arguments, and I'm also won over by the coverage that it's getting. After Jimmy brought this up, I Googled these stories just to see how is the media treating this. And the conservative outlets all have headlines that say 188th Wing Commander resigns due to Pentagon policy regarding abortion. All of the neutral and liberal sources say Governor Sanders, 188th Wing, they basically say Governor Sanders says that this happened, and that's what actually happened. The conservatives, the Fox News, the local Arkansas, local, Live at 5's channels are all just saying this as a fact, when all the other legit news investigative reporters are saying, well, all we know is that Governor Sanders said this. The official statement from the military is that he resigned his command for personal reasons. So again, I'm won over by Jimmy's analysis. I think that in the end, I don't really care, if people go and decide to do things for their own personal beliefs. The point where I get into deep concern is when they do the Kim Davis thing of I'm going to use my governmental democratically imbued power that I have to attack people based on my own personal beliefs and deny them their rights and lock them up and do things like that. That's where I think we should be really concerned. So this is, to me, a nothing burger. It's a deepity. It's a cynical political move by Huckabee Sanders and nothing more. Jimmy?
Yeah, I would like to just give some closing thoughts. I think I have an obligation to do this, and I really feel this way. First of all, I just want to acknowledge that I owe my career as an officer to a Muslim man, one of the best leaders that I've ever served with. We serve together despite our differences. People look at the military and they think that we are this kind of right-wing arm of conservative politics. And that may have been true earlier in history, but you know what? It's changed, okay? We have transgender troops that we supervise, or I certainly have, members of the LGBTQ community and members of all races, all faiths, and we all put the uniform on and we really do our best. And there's a lot that I could say. Honestly, our segment is aimed to be about 20 minutes, and I could probably go much longer than that. But I do just want to say that politicians need to stay out of our personal affairs, need to stay out of the military's affairs. We have the luxury and the expectation to be apolitical. So let's just leave it at letting us be apolitical and do our jobs. That's what I'm going to say there.
I have one follow-up to that, is that you are echoing, if you remember Jen Peoples, a host of the Atheist Experience from long ago. She served in the U.S. Army for 26 years. She retired as a lieutenant colonel. She was, if I recall correctly, a helicopter pilot. Described herself as one of those foxhole atheists, and she herself had many stories of serving alongside devotedly religious people and all working towards the same goal, which is, protecting our country. So thank you. Thank everybody else. Thank you to Colonel Patterson for what he's doing it the right way. So I just wanted to add that.
So if you want to learn more about politicians getting into, our business or them building nothing burgers, and also a wonderful thanks to our troops and what they do for us. So more on that, click here.